So, guys, I do want to talk about my YouTube channel and my AEW reviews. And I got some, good news and some bad news. And what I want to say is that I've been really enjoying, doing AEW reviews, and that's definitely going to continue. But another thing that's been happening on my channel is two things that I'm not okay with. That, I've done a lot of traveling to professional wrestling events, but the big thing is that eventually I'm gonna have to cut down on that, and one of the main reasons is that I live with my brother. I pay him like $300 worth of rent, and that's very fair for what I have. But it's getting to a point where he wants me to move out of his place next year. Like, my brother has health issues, so it's almost like if anything happens to him and he passes away, I'm on my own. I just know how to fend for my own. But I'm definitely going to try to, live in Airbnbs or just try to live, very cheaply. I do understand there's ups and downs because I just don't want to get my own apartment or my own house because if I'm traveling around the world, it's easy to get burglarized. And the other thing, too, is that I just like living around people because that way, you have, your own, like I said, when nobody else is, so it's almost like, when you're not around, somebody else is around. So that way, your stuff is not going to be stolen, really. And then the other part of it is that, I have a bunch of debt to pay off. Like, I have student loans, I have some tax debts. I'll be honest about it. So I do have to get to a point where I'm just really grinding and paying it down. And then also, the other big thing, too, is that nobody has ever done anything like what I'm doing. Like, if you really want to think about it, I've been to every AEW pay-per-view since All Out last year. So I just have to go to Redemption and Redemption, All In, and All Out. And then I would have done a year of just being at every AEW pay-per-view. Like, nobody's ever done that. I don't think even in the Attitude Era or the 1980s, somebody's ever done that. Where they've gone to like a year straight of pay-per-views. And I understand why that is. Like, first of all, it's very expensive. The next thing is obviously, you look at WWE and how, they're a cash grab. And also too, it's also like when you look at independents like Combat Zone Wrestling or GCW or a few other companies, they're always going to the same places. Like, either with Combat Zone Wrestling, it's always like Delaware or the Pennsylvania area. With GCW, it's usually either Philadelphia or Atlantic City. But if you're always going there every single time, it's going to feel repetitive. But with AEW, they do make an effort to go to Canada a few times, throughout the U.S. many times, and Europe at least one time. But to afford all that's very expensive. I use like payment plans. I have friends who lend me money, and it's just getting to a point where my brother wants me to move out next year. So it's almost like, I could be in a situation where I could be homeless. I could be in a situation where my brother kicks me out with force or violence. And then I'm like, okay, well, then I can't hold a job because obviously, you can't go to work, with looking homeless or whatever, really, So it's going to be a challenging situation, but that's November 2027. And then the last thing is, and I'm not trying to say this in a mean way, but this is true. Like, Tony Khan, Vince McMahon, Paul Heyman, Eric Bischoff, Jim Cornette, Dusty Rhodes, whoever, they don't care about, they don't care about me. And that's not a mean thing to say. That's true. They don't care about me. So, if I go to like a year straight of shows, Tony Khan is not going to care about me. He will only care if I did something like go to the VIPs a lot, or if I had a YouTube channel and I had a lot of sway. Like, if I was Simon Miller, talk about AEW, that's going to matter way more than just me, who, doesn't get a lot of views on my channel, really. So I'm going to have to really cut down, but I also think it's a good thing because obviously, why do companies have shows all over the country? Because, so everybody can see it, really. So I just have to cut down, but it doesn't mean it's going away forever. The next thing is that I'm not like how I've done like Dynamite reviews. There's two issues. No, actually three issues. The first thing is that I'm massively busy. So I can't always watch the show. Like this week, I couldn't watch the show because I had to work overtime to afford my trip to San Francisco. And then next week, I'm going to Nashville. And then next week, when I'm in Nashville, then next week, next Wednesday, I can't watch the show again because I have to work a lot of overtime, 14-hour days in a row. And, one of them falls on a Wednesday. And then I have to say to myself, after working 14 hours, I have to spend 2 hours watching the show, an hour reviewing it, go to sleep, and then I got to wake up, with like 2 or 3 hours of sleep. Then I have to work 14 hours. Then I have to catch a flight to Nashville. And then I have to sleep in the flight. Then I have to spend like, a couple hours on Friday in Nashville. No. I gotta miss Dynamite. So that's also one of the big problems with working so much and traveling so much is that I do not have the time to always watch the show. And I also understand there's people like Wrestle Toddy, I Am Zane, Deportius, off the Mike Sport Networks and many other people who can consistently watch these shows because they have different lifestyles. I'm the only person who travels to as many shows as possible. And that's not, that doesn't make me special because you look at somebody like Wrestle Toddy, I think she's going to, we've talked, she's going to Chicago. Last year she went to All In and she's gone to a couple shows. Deportius, he went to Chicago, but he's from Michigan. So like he's from Detroit, I think he's from Michigan. So like that's a cheap flight. Then he went to New York City. That's cheap from Michigan. But I've kind of gone to all of them. And you know what, you look at their situation, like, they don't have to be working like, over 100 hours a week. They don't have to like eat shit, sleep, like, they don't have to eat shit, fall asleep, wake up, flicker their beautiful little eyes and then be like, oh, well, now I got to work for 14 hours, 16 hours. And I live with a relative with mental health issues. So it's almost like if I'm sleeping, he's going to be taking a hammer. And my brother likes to cook, so my brother's going to be taking a hammer. He's going to be smashing chocolate for his chocolate chip brownies. He's going to be taking a hammer and smashing for his walnut brownies. And then my brother just doesn't care really, he's told me to drink alcohol. He's told me to take alcohol and melatonin or take melatonin pills because if he's going to be noisy and loud, that's what's going to happen really. Like I remember when I first moved in, my brother was vacuuming all night and I almost lost one job because of it. And then now, he's very elated for me to move out, but part of it is, is the issues that he has really. We were both adopted out of abuse and neglect. We grew up in a very emotionally abusive household. And we were always really for it. My parents believed in exposure therapy. We were both misdiagnosed with autism. So my brother and I got assignments growing up like, you need to know the name of all your classmates. You need to know them, need to know all 30 people in your class. Or else, you're grounded. And I remember my brother always failing that. Or I remember how my brother would always watch cartoons as a kid. So I remember my dad getting fed up and saying, you need to watch the news for at least 1 hour a day. And my brother just had a big stink about it. My dad threatened to take a hammer and smash the television. Or I remember one time my dad had a thing where we would all watch TV together. And I remember we were watching like a drama. I think it was like Boston Public or something like that. I remember my brother just like trying to be like, James Bond, like kind of like sneaking away and playing video games because he was sick and tired of just being like, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. And that's kind of why I travel a lot because I did grow up in a household of you do this, you do that. You know what, Byron, you like running, run the track team. Or, my dad even said to me, like he thinks that one of the reasons why I have a mental illness is because I review professional wrestling. I travel, I go out. I don't settle down. I don't have family. I don't just whip out my penis and make a bunch of babies, make a bunch of grandchildren. Because I remember like my dad just saying, you run from it, you can hide from it, but you have a mental illness. But we all know that's not a sign of a mental illness, is the fact that I want to live my life the way I want to live my life. Again, I've lived through a lot of really painful shit in my life and a lot of sadness, and my life was, I wanted to die every single day of my life until I turned 34 years old, and I'm 38. So the last 4 years of my life has been the best. But part of that is because I have a brother that allows me to live with him. I have a brother that allows me to, do what I want really. But there's a certain point, I think, in everybody's life where you say, hey, even though you do what you want, and even though you can take care of yourself, and even though I work at a hospital, I make like 100 grand a year with overtime, maybe 50,000 without overtime. There's a certain point where you say, or I tell myself it's not age appropriate. I also, as I said, my brother weighs 350 pounds. He almost died earlier this year because he fell on ice and hit his head. So the thing is that if he dies, and he's not at a good weight really, and he has a brain mindset of settling down. He's 41. Like, he wants to think about retirement in like 20 years. But the point of it is that he just wants to kind of like, just, I think, ride into the sunset, type of thing really. And also we know big people don't last that long. You weigh 350 pounds, you more likely you're not going to live until 70, type of thing really. But I got to just like take care of myself. And I also think it's good for me because, I don't have the best, financial skills, financial sense. I do have that. But I think that if I'm in a situation like, hey, money has to matter. Hey, I can't get everything that I want. Hey, I can't rely on friends to pay me off. Hey, I gotta, I have a friend in Rhode Island that I gave $400 to because she's facing eviction. And then I have another friend that I gave money to. And then also, I have bad eating habits. I order out almost every single day. Like, it's going to be good for me to be in a situation where every penny counts, really. Every time you mess up with your money, or every single time you try to say, hey, I can pay this off and I can't really, it's going to be good for me to be in that situation because that's what life is, So I think that that's one of the big things I'm trying to say. I know I went on a tangent is that's kind of why I got to cut down the traveling because it's going to motivate me to say, hey, it's either this or that, really. The next thing that I will have to say is, as I said before, that really I work so many hours that it's not possible for me to always review Dynamite, and I do not like doing that. And one of the bad things is you have to be consistent because, I'm going to Forbidden Door. I might be one of the few people that are going to be down at Forbidden Door doing a vlog. A lot of people are going to watch my channel, and a lot of people are going to say, hey, what's happening to you on Thursday when you're not reviewing the show, really? What the fuck, really? And then also, I want to keep improving. I want to keep doing better with these travel videos. But again, how do I get better when I'm at work, really? Because again, imagine if you have ideas and plans and then somebody says, oh, well, but you need to work 14 hours at the job. Oh, well, there's managers and there's leads and there's bosses in the hallway. And they're going to be paroling to make sure that nobody's sitting around and whatever. Like, I work at a high expectation hospital. So it's hard for me to be on top of this, but I really want to keep doing the reviews. I want to keep doing stuff. And then the other issue is that I'm getting older. So, I fall asleep and I get really angry with myself because, again, like I almost missed my flight because I fell asleep because I had to be up for like almost 2 days straight, really, working like 14 hours and then waking up in the afternoon, working 14 hours, and then staying up until the afternoon on Thursday, catching a flight to Charlotte, then 3 hours at that airport, and then flight from San Francisco to here, from Charlotte to San Francisco. And then when I come back, it's going to be Monday. No, it's going to be Monday from 10 p.m. to 9 a.m. to get from San Francisco to Baltimore to Hartford, and then when I'm going to fall asleep, and then when I wake up, it's going to be time to go to work, and then I'm working 13 hours one day, 14 hours the next day, 14 hours the next day, and then Friday I have to go to the airport and go to Nashville. So it's just going to be a lot of just, moving the fuck around, really, So I do feel kind of overwhelmed. And that's one of the reasons why I should not be going to every AEW show as possible. Because while it's fun, it's very painful, just to be like, okay, every single time I wake up, I open up my beautiful little eyes. I have to be like, oh, fuck, I got to go to work. Or, oh, fuck. It feels like, and honestly, it makes me feel like when I was a kid, I had a younger brother, and I hated my younger brother a lot when he was little because he would always be doing things like if I was working on a school project, he'd be kicking open my door And then he'll be like, okay, you got to play with me. Or sometimes he'd walk up to my dad and be like, can Byron play with me? I would say, no, I'm busy. And then my dad would be like, sure, you're going to play with him. Okay, okay, okay. And I remember like, well, that's one of the reasons why I ditched him. After I went to college, I just didn't talk for him for many years. I remember telling people the story about how one Thanksgiving my dad intimidated me to go home because my little brother missed me. And then I also remember when I walked down on him because I remember like when I graduated college, I started to live with my older brother a couple months after living at home, and I really saw with my younger brother that he was a little too spoiled, or my parents really didn't discipline him a lot, and I kind of felt like with my younger brother he really needed to learn that he's not going to get his way really. So I remember like how I didn't talk to him for like over 10, 15 years, and he kind of had to grow up without me because I felt that he just had to learn a lot about people are not there for you when you want them, because I loved my grandmother growing up and I loved my aunt growing up. And I remember how, if I said, can my aunt hang out, can my aunt come over, I'll get smacked in the face for being rude. But it's different with how he treats me, really. But the point of it is, it does feel like that when things are back to back. It feels like I have a younger brother, or it feels like I have a kid that's not going to let me do what I want to do, really. I've not read books in over like 5 years. My drone was sitting on my counter for like 5 years because I've been so fucking busy, So there are consequences, guys. There are consequences for the life you live. Yeah, I've seen so much history. I've had the greatest days of my life happen because of AEW and the traveling that I've done, really. But there is a point where, you know what, I want to cut it down. I never ever want to fall in love with professional wrestling. The day I fall out of love with professional wrestling, I hope to die in my sleep. I hope to die of a heart attack. Because I really like the way my life is going. I travel. I do whatever the fuck I want. Nobody tells me what to do. I work hard for my check. I spend my check. When I was growing up, I remember telling people the story that when I graduated high school, I worked at the state of Connecticut with my father. I made over $12,000, and my dad had a joint bank account, so I never saw the money. And if I had a question, smack across the face. My dad made over $100,000 a year, but that's how I grew up. Because some parents do that. Even if they make over 100 grand, they're like, you're not going to spend money on fucking bullshit. I have to pay for your expenses. So therefore, when you have a job, I take that money because it's teaching you responsibility. No, it's just teaching me that you're the father. You can smack me if I question it, and you can take my money. Really, you can extort me. So when I spend my money and when I travel, when I do things I want to do, that's always the way of saying Byron does what Byron wants, because Byron grew up with shouting, yelling, smacking by my dad to do whatever he wanted, or be like, well, you don't save your money, you have autism. You live with your brother, you have autism. You like professional wrestling, you have autism. You're 38 years old and you live with your brother, you have autism. You lost a job, you have autism. It always has to be a put down, So that's why I like to do what I want to do, and that's why I want to keep doing what I want to do the rest of my life. But sometimes there are some changes that got to happen. And one thing I'm proud of is that I told my brother I can do 3 years of fuckery. He gave me 3 years to move out. It expires on November 2027, but I'm doing the best that I can. I've paid down $11,000 in credit card debt. I owe my boy Wesley, like $3,000. It's gonna take me like 6 weeks to pay him back. I have a girlfriend, and I help pay her $300 worth of rent. I don't want to see her on the street. I pay for her rent. I'm responsible for people. I know that if I don't do well, there's people that will be on the street. There will be people that will die. So I take care of So I have a girlfriend that I take care of because I don't want to see her on the street. I don't want to see her die. Out there. So there's a lot of things I got to do, and but I'm living the life that makes me happy, and I think we all have to do that. And sometimes, family can be the best thing, or family can really, really hurt us. But You got to do what's best for you. And also, too, as I said, there are consequences for being me. And that means two things. There's a lot of benefits to my life. There's a lot of things that make me happy. There's a lot of things that I've seen and done and felt that most people will never feel because they've not pushed themselves to travel. Or we've always been taught that life is really going to college, getting into credit card debt, having a family, getting into family debt, paying your taxes, and then you die one day. But I've sort of been lucky that I've been through a lot of emotional abuse, domestic violence, family violence. To say I don't want to have a family, I don't want to have kids, I don't want to be blowing my paycheck on that. And I've also kind of learned that when you grow up in a household of do this, do that, I've told people the story that when I was like dozing off at the dinner table when I was in high school, and I remember my dad forcing me to go to bed at 7 at night. And I remember how my younger brother, who was like, he had to be like 5 at that time. He went to bed around 10 and he was like laughing about like how, I'm 18 years old, but my dad's making me go to bed at 7 a.m., at 7 p.m. But my younger brother, who's this wild out of control, like 6-year-old kid, is going to bed around not having a later bedtime because my dad, like my senior year of college, was just the last year of smacking me around, last year of bossing me around, last year of berating me if my homework wasn't correct. I remember spelling the word Jupiter wrong. And my dad forced me to work on my homework, to rewrite my homework and laugh in my face about it. But then, again, we all understand why I'm talking to my dad. I think like when I graduated college, I probably talked to my dad maybe less than, maybe I added up all the times I've talked to my dad in the past, 25 years. It's probably been less than, in the last 15 years, it's probably less than 12 hours really. And that's kind of been good for me. I hate even saying this. I really think that when my dad dies, it's going to be in the hospital that I work at, and more than likely someone's going to manipulate me to say, hey, this room needs to be clean. Oh, it's my dad dying. I got to just hold his hand, kiss him on the head, and say I love you. And when I will be like, what? If somebody manipulated me to do that, I'll just quit my job on the spot and say, I'd rather be homeless because you're not going to make me say goodbye to my dad when he's dying if I don't want to say goodbye to him. If I want to be like, okay, you're dying, but you put me through all this shit, and that's how I want to go out. That's how I want to go out, really. But my life is my life, and that's kind of been who Byron is. I am somebody who is a badass, hard worker. I'm a guy who has Herculean goals. I'm creative, I'm inventive, I learn, I challenge myself, I do overwhelming challenges. That's who Byron is. When I was a child, I was a black kid with autism and possibly mentally retarded. That's how my parents saw me. That's how a lot of people saw me growing up, as a black kid that's possibly mentally retarded and can't do better than being a janitor, so that's what I grew up with. It's good that I've, through the emotional abuse, through wanting to kill myself from the time I was 6 years old all the way to 38 years old. I'm good that I lived through all of that, and I have the life that I want to. I got myself a girlfriend I'm in love with. I'm gonna move out. I travel. I do all these really great things, but it's gonna be reduced a little bit. But I also understand too, I'm 38. And I'm gonna die one day. So maybe when I'm 58. I probably can't be traveling anymore. 1 or 2 years, what's my budget going to look like? Where am I going to be in 1 or 2 years? I may be living in an Airbnb. I may have an Airbnb host say, hey, you're 38, you're 40. You got to get your own apartment. Then I may lose people who are like, hey, since you can't pay this for me, that for me, goodbye, really. So my life may go into some really just more challenging directions, but I just know to work hard, stay above water, just know who your friends are and know that, life gets challenging as it goes on, but things will change, sometimes, it's a lot of hell, then good times, and then it goes back to a lot of hell again. And I think that's what's going to happen, really. But I'm going to do my best. I'm going to do the best I can and work a lot harder on this YouTube channel, and really just review AEW when I can. I want to be an AEW lifer. I really want to also accomplish my goal. I just have to go to Montreal in London, and then All Out. And then I would have be the only person that's been to like a year straight of professional wrestling shows. I want that to happen so badly. But it comes down to money. And then also, I want to do a GoFundMe, but it may not be a good thing because, for to pay for somebody to go to wrestling events, there's more better clauses. But I gotta do what's right for me, and I gotta do what's right for me, and I gotta also do what's honest, really.